Hey, Greg here, founder of Wrestling-Divaz.webs.com, dedicated to highlighting the most beautiful and deadly entertainers in professional wrestling. My next special guest is an accomplished model, actress, professional wrestling manager, and ring announcer. She is best known for her run with the Spike TV turned Destination America wrestling show, Total Nonstop Action Impact Wrestling, where she managed the likes of Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt. I am truly honored to introduce my next special guest. She is really a modern-day Miss Elizabeth. Joining me from the very lovely state of California is former knockout SoCal Val. Hi, Val. How are you today? And thanks for joining me.
Hi. I'm so great. Thank you for such a lovely introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, I try to do my homework. And how's the weather in California today? It's kind of muggy where I am.
Oh, it's beautiful as always. You know, here it rains Swarovski crystals, and it's always just a glorious day in California. You know how we do.
Of course, glitz and glam. So before we go over your career, I have to talk to you about what you're up to recently. You have your Villainous California stable up in Shine Wrestling. You're paying attention to what's happening in NXT down at the WWE Performance Center and everything that they're doing. You worked as a rosebud for the company as part of Adam Rose's entourage. Is that still in the cards, a future with the WWE? What's your thoughts on that? Because I know that was a goal that was not so hidden from the public when you've done interviews in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's always been the goal. You know, since I started watching wrestling when I was around 11 or 12, when I knew I wanted to do this with my life, I knew that's where I would want to end up ultimately. Though I had great runs in TNA, and I don't see myself, stopping on the independents anytime soon. But with WWE, that's always been my goal, and I don't think it's anywhere near off the table. I have a really good relationship with the people there that I speak with in terms of how I would fit in and, what I would what it would entail to be there one day. So I'm still pretty optimistic about it. I also, though, don't want to ever put my eggs in one basket. I feel like getting as much experience as an on-air host and now doing more commentary on the indies as well is really something that I think will eventually prepare me for, other genres if I ever decide to leave wrestling. The cool thing is having a skill as an announcer and production skills that I have and video editing and things like that, social media consulting, some things people don't even realize that I do. I think this is all really good to have kind of in your back pocket because if you do enter another genre one day, you'll be prepared and you don't want to pigeonhole yourself. I always use the word longevity in the business, and so far having those skills have really kept me in the forefront, so to speak. So I don't think WWE is that far off. I don't know when I would fit in there. Hopefully one day, but like I said, I just try to keep busy with as much learning as I can and kind of perfecting my craft, if you will.
For sure, diversification is key. And going to the beginning of your career, I mean, you entered the industry around age 16, which is very young even for standards of what the business has. And you were approached by a promoter after watching wrestling for a couple of years, starting at your teenage years. I want to know, what about the opportunity made you want to say yes, and how did you adjust to your first couple months in the industry? Because that's a very trying time to enter such a difficult industry.
It is for sure, and I appreciate you realizing that. It's funny, the people that that you meet that didn't give you a chance or that were, less than nice. It's funny that you remember that, as you go along in the business. And I'm not one to hold a grudge by any means, but it's interesting that the way that I treat new people in the business is so, hey, is this your first day? Is everyone? The first thing I say to everyone, whether it be somebody who's a complete rookie and they're a total amateur, or they're coming in from a different federation. Here's a good example. Drew Galloway, who's such an amazing talent, came to TNA during the UK tour, and one of the first things I said to him was everyone being nice? Because I just hope that, in this day and age, that everyone can treat each other, whether you're new or a seasoned veteran, that you can treat everybody with the same sort of respect and the same sort of warm welcome. So that's very important to me because I wasn't always treated the best in the beginning. But yeah, I had my three days after my 16th birthday, I was doing my very first show for GSCW in Anaheim, and I had been attending shows when I was about 14, 15, and I was attending XPW and different federations around the Southern California area, hence the SoCal moniker. And on a board called SoCal Uncensored, the fans were kind of saying, who's this chick with the legs walking around? Because I wore skirts and I'm kind of a leggy gal, and I was so young back then, but I was, I've always been a real feminine dresser, so I'm sure I had little skirts and dresses on going to wrestling shows because that's what feels natural to me. And it just kind of created a little bit of a buzz, and then I was at an XPW show with a couple friends, two of my best friends to this day, actually, David and Deja, and they were approached by Henry Luna, who ran GSCW, and they asked me if I wanted to manage, and they knew how young I was, but, my mom was kind of like, hey, you're 15, but if you can go to these shows with, your older friends that are in their 30s that I trust, and if this business doesn't change you, you're free to do it. And she's always, that's probably the biggest compliment my mother has ever given me, that she never saw the business change me. She knew that it wasn't going to corrupt me, that I'm a very strong-willed person, and I know myself very well. That's one thing I do pride myself on. So she knew that it was something that I really loved doing and watching. And then when I got involved, it was just, I just fell more and more in love with it. But as far as things being a little tough in the beginning, working with guys, I'm such a girl's girl that I had more girlfriends growing up. I didn't have a whole lot of guys. There are no males in my immediate family. I had my brother-in-law and certain people around when I was younger, but being around just mostly men was kind of interesting, and getting respect from all of them wasn't the easiest thing. I think I just had to sort of be quiet and kind of prove myself over the years, because you don't know why I'm getting in the business. So many girls get in it for the wrong reasons, and until a few years in, I don't think people realize, oh, she really does just love this business and she wants to contribute and she loves it like we do and watches it and studies it. So I think the respect eventually came from all the other wrestlers that were male, but it didn't come easy, I'll be very honest.
So as a manager, you study a lot of tapes, and that really is your key to training, is watching, tapes of, let's say, Sunny or Miss Elizabeth or any of the classic people who paved the way. And I want to know, when you watch tapes, because I'm sure you still do as the industry is ever evolving, is there any particular sort of factors that you look at when you study someone who's trying to get out there in the business and manage, and what do you kind of look for in your study in pinpoint?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was having this discussion with someone recently, and things that I really admired in, for example, I think of Sunny almost immediately in terms of originality, and she was just sort of fearless. She just kind of had this character that she was really good at speaking off the cuff and doing, being her kind of sassy self. The sexiness kind of just came naturally to her. I think it was sort of an intrinsic sexiness that you could just tell on camera. She was just so charismatic and so vibrant and vivacious, and I really loved her for that. But when I watch somebody that's in the business, and we were actually speaking about ring announcers recently, but this applies to managers, ring announcers, whatever. One thing I feel like, and I don't want to sound, too rigid here, but I feel like there's a certain respect that should come along with it. I don't really understand, the girls that come in and I say, well, have you looked at any tapes, or do you watch a lot of wrestling? And they're not that into it. And I'm just kind of like, you're not going to last very long if you're not, studying the ones that came before you, or you're not going to be very respected if you don't at least try to, know your history a little bit. That always bothers me. So I think that's a big thing. Doing your homework is huge to me. I also, I think it's kind of a natural talent and ability when it comes to charisma. To be honest, some people have it, some people don't, and I feel like you can teach somebody to do moves and go through the motions, but the ones that last are usually the ones that have a little bit of acting ability. That's a huge factor, I think. And the other thing I'll say is, which came back to the ring announcers, I was saying that I was doing a show once, and there was a girl that was ring announcing, and she kind of said, is there anything I can change? And I didn't really have the heart, and I should have just been honest with her, but she asked me what she could have changed, and I kind of wanted to explain in a nice way. And I might have said it. I wish I was a little bolder about it. But what I was trying to say, without being rude, was that she kind of needed to know her place in the hierarchy of the show, meaning, you're the ring announcer. She was kind of, even some ring announcers kind of have a bit of a character. Me being SoCal Val, if I started to ring announce on a show and they wanted me to be more of the SoCal Val character that I'd been in the past on that same show, that makes sense. But, for the most part, you're an anchor, and you need to take the job seriously. And when, there's a lot of girls and guys that are ring announcers that kind of try to overshadow the wrestlers and sort of try to throw themselves and thrust themselves into these storylines when they're not asked to be. And that's really not your role as an announcer. And maybe it's because a lot of the ring announcers or managers are trying to be wrestlers, but you really have to know your place in terms of, whether you're a character or not, I think ring announcing is something that, again, should be taken seriously, but you have to know that your job is not to be, the flamboyant one unless you're, told specifically to be. But I don't think a lot of ring announcers know that. I think they get very comfortable and complacent in their position and just think, okay, well, I'm part of the show, so I'll just outshine everybody. And it's really not about you. It's about them when you're ring announcing.
For sure. And that's certainly key with managing is knowing your place. I mean, we've had past special guests like Amy Vitale and Valerie Malone who are managers, and they say the key to managing is knowing what your lane is and staying within that lane while contributing to the match. How would you describe the role as a manager? Because I think that people misunderstand managers as far as they're not there to take the spotlight away from you. They're there to sensationalize and amplify the qualities of the wrestlers they manage. So what's your interpretation of what a manager does?
Yeah, I think people get confused because sometimes managers will eventually, here's a great example, the Lana storyline right now with Rusev, who I think she is just absolutely great. I was so happy when she came in and did that character so flawlessly and seamlessly made it work with Rusev. I really, really love watching her and enjoy her work. But, for example, Lana became somebody who was more popular than Rusev, and that was the entire storyline. That's why it's so exciting. And then the Ziggler stuff I love because I love a wrestling romance. Oh, my goodness. I'm such a sap for anything like that. Like going back to loving like Triple H, Kurt Angle, Stephanie, love triangles, any sort of a wrestling romance, and I'm just on board. That's probably the girly girl in me. But that sometimes happens when a manager can overshadow someone in a storyline. But yeah, for the most part, you should be thinking in terms of being their mouthpiece, in terms of being their. Think about the word manager. It's almost like being somebody's agent, somebody's PR marketing rep, and what your job is to do is just to sell the person, and that's something that is kind of cool when it comes to announcing because you're kind of selling a different product. You're selling the actual product as opposed to a wrestler. But when you're managing a wrestler, you don't want to overshadow them. You want to know your place and let them shine, and you want to be the fabulous accessory to them. But they're who everyone is supposed to be coming to see, and you're doing a great job. Even Paul Heyman, who is the best manager in my opinion of all time. I mean, hands down, no question. Just literally oozes charisma from everything. He's amazing. He is somebody who you can think about how great of a manager he is, but when he's talking and when he's cutting a promo with Brock Lesnar, what he's really focused on is Brock Lesnar. And you can take away that he's great at what he does, Paul Heyman, but he is just so convincing that he makes you believe everything he says. He's believable. And I think that comes from a sort of a real place because I believe that he believes in people he's managing. So you can talk about what's real in wrestling or what's not real in wrestling, but I don't believe Paul Heyman has ever managed somebody that he doesn't truly believe in, and that gives him an outstanding amount of credibility, in my opinion.
So in wrestling, some pairs work as far as just even like tag teams. Some guys work together and some girls work together well, and some managers work together well, but some of them just don't click. What is the key to having that chemistry with whoever you're working with? What is needed in order for the crowd to connect to what your relationship is?
It's funny you say that because I really think that it's a two-way street. I've had people that honestly, it comes down to the fact that, from my experience, they have to want a manager and have to know how to use a manager. If a wrestler doesn't want a manager, whether it's a huge show or a very small independent show, it shows and it's very apparent, and it's just something that you really, really don't want to be involved in it, to the point where I would literally say, if you're working with somebody who you can just tell doesn't want you there, I wouldn't pursue it. It's just that you really have to have someone that could benefit from having a manager and that understands that they need a manager. It's not like a demeaning thing to need a manager. It's actually pretty cool when you're, aligned with somebody. It can be a very, very powerful duo. But, there are some wrestlers that you run into that and I ran into it especially when I was younger because I was working with a lot of, no offense, but I'll be very honest, a lot of hot-headed young guys who just say, oh, who is this girl, and especially when they don't know me and they don't know that I was a decent talker, and they eventually kind of came around, but a lot of them were just very not into the idea. And some of them I turned around to the idea, some of them I didn't, but it's all I can do as a manager is to try to do the best that I can. But yeah, I think it's really a willingness from the wrestler to want and understand how to use a manager, and hopefully the wrestler has also watched a lot of tapes. And if you're put with a manager, I would, recommend looking up wrestlers who have managers and seeing how they utilize them and how they make it work with the two-person dynamic. So I think that really comes down to how to use a manager and why, and respecting that you have one rather than, oh crap, they've settled me with somebody that I don't want in my corner, you know?
For sure. And certainly managing is greatly appreciated in the industry, but some may argue that comparatively to, let's say, the 70s, 80s, and even early 90s, the role of managers have dwindled, at least on television. And when it dwindles on television, it certainly does affect everything in the wrestling industry because it sets a precedent. What's the meaning of the shift of the, I don't want to say sort of dismantling of managers, but the sort of non-focus of what they are? I mean, sure, you have Paul Heyman, but I mean, it was kind of hard back in the day to avoid being a manager. I mean, and I personally loved all the managers in back in the day. So what's the meaning of this shift, and why is it like this?
I think I really don't believe it's anything like, oh, well, you know, they had a bad experience with this, so then they stopped doing it. I don't believe it's anything like that. I think wrestling as a whole is cyclical and very trendy, and things go in and out of style all the time. If you look at the style of wrestling that's changed, you know, in the Attitude Era, things were just so brash and hardcore and, you know, raw and, you know, meaning the actual term Raw, not the show Raw, but both really. I think it's something that goes in and out of style. And for example, people say that about tag team wrestling, that tag team wrestling, you know, for a while wasn't really put on the forefront. You know, but then eventually it was again. It's look at trends in fashion and you know, even wrestlers and how they look. You know, for a while everyone was bald. For a while everyone had long hair. Now everyone has beards. It's just something that, you know, it's kind of a monkey see, monkey do, but that society in general always does that. So I don't think it's really anything that it's some sort of a lost art form. I think that there are some very good, solid managers in Paul Heyman and Lana right now. I really love Summer at ringside. I know I haven't seen her on TV in a little bit, but I really thought she got it and was sassy and just had a great presence about her. Somebody that I love, and I'll mention as a manager, is Carmella in NXT. I've said a couple times on Twitter, I really, really enjoy watching her. She's just, you feel, you know, to hold your own with talents like Enzo, who I think is amazing, and then Big Cass, who's, you know, somebody that you just is such a head turner, you know, being such a big guy, and he's great on the mic as well. For her to be able to hold her own with those guys just kind of speaks volumes about how good she is. And I've seen her wrestle, I've seen her manage, I've seen her talk, and every time I really kind of just nod my head and go, this girl really gets it. Like, she's really entertaining to watch. If I was, you know, a young girl at 13 or 14 like I was back in the day, I would have revered her just as I did with Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler and Dawn Marie and been like, wow, she's sassy, I like her, and, you know, she always looks like a superstar. So she's one that I think will do really, really well, whether it's NXT or the main roster. Now, you know, both areas are just as respected and exciting. So I really like watching her. But, again, I don't think it's really anything more than a trend and a cyclical thing in wrestling for managers to be both put on the back burner or to be pushed to the forefront.
So we spoke a little bit earlier about diversification and longevity, and to be quite frank, I mean, not a lot of girls have lasted as long as you have in the industry. A lot of people get burnt out. A lot of people get, you know, mentally frustrated over not making it or not getting this spot or that spot. What's the key to longevity? Because it certainly is rare when you come across a manager who's lasted as long as you have.
Well, thank you. But, you know, I was speaking with a girlfriend of mine. We just did a runway show, and we were sitting around. Actually, we're sitting underneath the table, just hanging out in the green room before we actually had to go walk the runway. And you know, we were talking about the fact that some people get nervous and that other girls are very insecure, and you know, sometimes you're treated poorly by, you know, management, or the same thing in wrestling, whether it's a promoter or whoever. And I joked with her and I said, you know what, there's a strategy I've learned over the years, and it's worked very well for me. And it's a top secret strategy, so I don't want you to tell anyone. And I told her, don't care as much. And what I mean by that is, yes, you can love, and we'll talk in wrestling terms now, yes, you can love wrestling as a whole, and you can love the business and all that, and you can care so much for the business, but you really have to let things go. It's interesting because, like I said earlier, I'm someone who knows myself very well, and I can be, you know, everyone has insecure moments. Everyone has frustrating things happen. I've had, I talked a lot about the fact that I was ring girl for a very long time in TNA, and everyone just said, well, aren't you just so frustrated? And, of course, some of it was frustrating. But when you look at the bigger picture, I just feel really grateful. And maybe that's, me being a little naive, but I just felt really grateful that I was involved and that I could contribute. So it really makes things like that go by easier, because what I was doing the entire time was still delving into different areas of the business and starting to, try to come up with creative content, or try producing, or try more announcing and writing my own scripts and getting to produce, Hogan in a commercial and things that were very exciting to me, because I thought if they're going to, let me be ring girl for this long, I'm going to do all I can around it to, give myself another skill set. And honestly, whether it comes to people having, not the mental strength to do this, or the insecurities run wild, or they're catty with other girls, or, I see wrestlers all the time with really, really horrible attitudes and problems with authority that I'll never understand. A lot of wrestlers get in their own way as far as whether they're being negative, saying, oh, I'm too old, they'll never hire me, or, oh, I'm treated horribly, or they don't know what a star I am, or this or that. I have no time for complainers. And I remember back in TNA, there were some new guys that came in, and they were all just sitting around complaining. And I remember I got up from the bleachers and I walked away, because I thought, I don't even want to be around this or be associated if somebody in power walks by and sees me with these guys that are sitting here complaining, when this is all they wanted to do with their lives, is be in a big company. And now that they're in the big company, every single day it was, oh, well, I'm not being used right, or, oh, I'm not, well, then figure something out. I'm not saying that bad things don't happen, but you really have to hold yourself accountable for all of this stuff. That, it's frustrating to be in a company that might not push you the way that you want to be pushed, but if that's not working for you, then, get another skill set, do more on the outside, or, change up your character, or make them pay attention in other ways. So I just really think that the reason behind all the longevity is just being someone really easy to work with, someone that's really positive. Terry Taylor and I speak quite often, and he always says that I have such a great attitude, and that's the best compliment I can really be given, is that I work hard and my attitude's always positive and happy. Eric Bischoff one time pulled me aside, and I'll never forget it. It was probably the most, I could tear up even just right now thinking about it, because I really appreciated him saying it, and I think I thanked him a couple times after that for it. I'd worked for TNA for so long, and Eric Bischoff had been there maybe a couple years by then, or around then, and he pulled me aside literally one day and said, I just want you to know that I see that you work really hard. You're the first one here. You're the last to leave. And I really wanted you to know that you always have a smile on your face, and you're so positive, and I just really appreciate that. I'm not sure who else doesn't, but I personally just want to say thank you for your attitude. And I just thought, out of every maybe potential bad day or bad show I've ever done, this was all worth it, to be told that, and I just really appreciated that from him. And I said on an interview recently that it's all well and good to be somebody that, oh, wow, she looks cute in a bikini, or she's, a cute girl, or that's fine, but there's a dozen cute girls. There's a million girls that can pose in a bikini. There's a million girls that could have, talent. But the problem is with a lot of these girls is they don't have their ego in check. They don't love the sport, and they aren't positive people. So I think being positive is probably the number one thing that you have to try to do to get past all of the potential misfortunes in any business, not just ours.
So before we wrap up, I have to say that I certainly still think that you have much to offer the industry, but when you finally hang up your boots or heels, in your case, because they always say that once you enter the industry, you never truly leave it. How do you think wrestling will continue to affect your life even after you, quote-unquote, leave the industry?
I don't really ever see myself leaving it completely ever. I don't think anyone really does. And those that do, that really wanted to do that, that's totally their prerogative. But I don't see me being someone that just says, oh, I'll never do anything wrestling related again. I'm sure, one day I'll be a mom and have kids and not be able to do what I used to do. And I could possibly be in other areas of hosting, or presenting, you would call it in the UK, but hosting is what I call it. But I hope that there are still people that appreciate watching stuff that I did. That would be just the biggest honor in the world. And, I would love to be somebody that comes to these signings, that for example, Francine doesn't do many signings, but to see her at a signing once in a while and to see her reunited with all of her friends and her ECW brothers and sisters is kind of cool. So I hope that I can emulate women like that in the business that have, respectable careers and have gone on to be family women and followed other dreams, but that they still love and respect wrestling enough to come back and say thanks to the fans and make the little appearances. So I think that'll be me for sure when I'm older, is to always be involved and always try to sort of make it very apparent that there's no way I would ever regret anything in wrestling that I've done. So I hope the fans know that, and I think that it'll always be part of my life in some way, shape, or form.
For sure. And before we get to how people can contact you, if you could sum up your experience in the industry using just one word, what would it be?
Oh, my goodness. One word. Oh, man.
Hardest question ever. It always is for everybody.
Yeah. I don't want to be cliche, but I might have to use 3 words, maybe just dream come true. I mean, people don't even understand when I talk to civs, as I call them, civilians, non-wrestling folks. When I talk about who I worked with now, I'm like, you don't understand. These are people that I was 11 years old in my room, like thinking, oh my gosh, I had their posters. I emulated all these girls' outfits. I was such a fan then, and I'm such a fan now. But it doesn't. That idea of I don't like the term marking out. I don't like the term mark personally, because I feel like it's such a negative thing these days. But, with me marking out, that never kind of goes away. I might hide it a little better because I have to be professional. But, me meeting Paul Heyman for the first time at WrestleMania this last year, I said to him, and hopefully I was a little cool and calmer than I'm imagining that I was, because I'm sure I looked a little bit like awestruck, but I never shook his hand before. And when he came up to me, I said, oh my gosh, sir, I have to say I'm not even a fan, I'm a student. And that's how I kind of approach people like that just are so monumental and influential in my career. So I would say it's just been a dream come true, because I really, who can say that they had a dream when they were a young kid and then got to do it, and still, I'm in my 13th year now, and I'm still making a living doing what I love so much. So it's just been amazing.
So we do have just a little bit of time left, so I'll let you plug in your official contacts and how people can get in touch with your management, because there are a lot of posters out there, so I want
There are. Basically, everything that comes from my official Twitter, I use Twitter more than anything. So it's at SoCal Valerie. If you search for SoCal Val, it'll be the one to pop up with the verified blue Twitter check mark, but it's at SoCal Valerie. There you can find my website, ValerieWindham.net. I've got my reel, my resume, everything on there. I have a store, SoCalValStore.com. I have a fashion blog, especially for all the female fans, kind of tend to like that, obviously, more than the guys. But Twitter is something where I really post everything that I'm doing. You can see where I'm traveling. You can see what shows I'm involved with. I was just tweeting earlier about Flips TV. It's Flips with 2 Ps, so FLIPPS.com is a really cool app that I think people are going to be talking about, because we just announced that there's going to be ROH Best in the World on June 19th and Impact Wrestling's TNA Slammiversary on July 28th and July it actually is June 19th and June 28th. So Slammiversary June 28th, Ring of Honor Best in the World June 19th. So those 2 pay-per-views are going to be able to be streamed on your phone or on your smart TV through Flips TV, and it's something that I'm excited about, because I'll be in the UK during both of these pay-per-views, so I'll be able to watch the shows on the go, which is really neat. So you can read more about that on my Twitter, but that's really where you can keep up with me and see what I'm up to. And trust me, there's a lot of selfies and behind the scenes on photo shoots, so it's something that I think everyone can enjoy.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll be sure to post all the links so people know the right places to contact you and to follow everything that you're doing. But I really want to thank you for your time. I've been following your career for such a long time, and like I said, you really are a modern-day Miss Elizabeth. So it's been a huge honor for me.
Thank you.
It's been a huge honor for me, and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. I had such a great time. Keep in touch, and best wishes to you, and I appreciate all the kind words, really. Thank you.
For sure. Everyone else, please check out www.wrestling-divaz.webs.com for more content, and be sure to follow the site on Twitter at Wrestling Divaz, again with the Z at the end, for all the latest updates.